It's day 27 of our Lent readings for 2021, and the book today is Daniel. Now, Daniel is one of the major prophets, along with Isaiah, Jeremiah and Ezekiel, who we've looked at in the last few days. But the book of Daniel is a bit different. It's set in Babylon. Daniel was a young man taken into exile into Babylon, and the first half of the book is really records of what happened in the royal courts of Babylon, and particularly how Daniel and some of the other exiles fared there. Then the second half of the book, from chapter 7 to 12, are visions which Daniel had, and they're given in pictorial language, what we would call apocalyptic literature, a bit like Revelation. And particularly at the end, the last chapter, it talks about judgment and resurrection, and that's the first account in Scripture of these future events. So it's important in many ways, this book. The story is that Daniel and some of the exiles, they went to Babylon. They rose in the ranks while in Babylon. A bit like Joseph in Pharaoh's court, Daniel rose to be an advisor to the kings. Now this naturally brought opposition from some of the Babylonians, so that leads to accounts of the stories like the fiery furnace and the lion's den, where that opposition was worked out. But in everything that Daniel did, he shows integrity and honesty, and honours God in everything he does. He never forsake the Lord while in Babylon. Now the passage I want to read, I'm going to read maybe a bit longer today. I'm going to read from chapter 1 and read through the account of when Daniel and his friends first arrive in Babylon and what happens when they arrive there. So reading from chapter 1, verse 1. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylon, and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel he gave the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. Now God had caused the official to show favour and compassion to Daniel. But the official told Daniel, "I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men of your age? The king would have my head because of you." Daniel then said to the guard whom the chief officer had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." So he agreed, and he tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and wine they were to drink, and gave them vegetables instead. To these 4 young men God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. Now, if you remember King Cyrus, that's 70 years later from when Daniel arrived in Babylon. The question that the book looks to answer is, how will God's people survive in exile? And the response the book gives is that the question should really be, how will the Babylonians cope with the God of the people in exile? In this first chapter, you see that they arrive in exile. They're in a new place. They're given new names. They're given new teaching and learning. They're given a new diet. But God remains the same. The thing that we learn from this book is that even in exile, the Lord is still the Lord. Till next time, have a blessed day.